It started on a Tuesday. Nothing special, really. Sunny, quiet, typical suburban street in New Haven, Connecticut. Trees lined the sidewalks like they were handpicked from a brochure. Kids played hopscotch 2 houses down. A dog barked from someone's backyard. And then he pulled up. Marcus Hayes, 32. Former Marine. Tall, built like a linebacker, skin like smooth obsidian. He wasn't just any man. He was successful, calm, and terrifyingly disciplined. He just closed on a house across the street from the Peters family. His first real home. One he worked for. One he earned. And that's exactly when Karen noticed him. Her name was Deborah Peters, but no one called her that anymore. She had earned her nickname over the years like a badge of dishonor. Karen, the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood watch. Early 50s, platinum blonde bob, wore sunglasses even in the shade. She had a habit of clutching her phone like it was a weapon. And the moment Marcus stepped out of his black Range Rover, her eyes locked in like a hawk. Now, to be clear, Marcus wasn't doing anything suspicious. Just unloading a few boxes from his trunk. Dressed in a plain t-shirt, jeans, and Timberlands. But to Karen, he didn't belong. Not here. Not in her neighborhood. She watched from behind her curtains, lips pursed tight. 5 minutes later, she was outside. Casual, of course. Just walking her dog, a yappy white Maltese named Muffin. Marcus saw her coming. He knew the type. He'd seen enough Karens in his time to recognize one from a mile away. But still, he gave her a nod. "Morning," he said, voice deep but friendly. Karen didn't respond. She just narrowed her eyes, like his very presence was a riddle she had to solve. He went back to his boxes. But she lingered. Then, like clockwork, the questions came. "New around here?" she asked, tone sharp as broken glass. "Just moved in," Marcus said without looking up. "Oh." She tilted her head. "You renting?" He paused, slowly turned toward her. "Nope. Bought the place." Karen blinked, as if that answer didn't compute. "Really? Really?" Marcus replied, setting down a box labeled fragile. She didn't like that. Not one bit. Something in her shifted, like she suddenly felt threatened. Like she lost control of a world she thought she owned. The next morning, it got worse. Marcus came out to find chalk on his driveway. "Go back where you came from," scribbled in shaky letters. He stared at it for a moment, jaw tightening, then quietly hosed it off. No reaction. No yelling. Just silence. But Karen watched from her window. She had called the cops. Said there was a suspicious man casing the neighborhood. When the squad car rolled up and the officer stepped out, Marcus was watering the lawn. The cop, young guy, maybe early 30s, walked up slow, hand near his belt. "Sir, we got a call," he said. "You live here." Marcus didn't even flinch. Just nodded and pulled out his ID. The cop studied it, then looked at the moving truck in the driveway, still half full. His eyes softened. "All right, looks like you're good." Marcus nodded. "Thanks for checking." But Karen, she was furious, watching it all from her porch like a hawk. She wanted a show. Instead, she got proof that Marcus wasn't the criminal she hoped he'd be. And from that moment on, it became personal. She started filming him. Every time he stepped outside, every time a package arrived, every visitor, every car. She posted in the neighborhood Facebook group about strange activity and a possible squatter. She even complained to the HOA. But here's the thing, Marcus didn't react. He didn't argue, didn't post back. He just smiled, stayed calm. That infuriated her even more, because Marcus wasn't just smart. He was patient. And Karen, she had no idea who she was messing with. But she was about to find out. Because that week, on Friday, Marcus invited someone over. Someone Karen would definitely recognize. And the moment she saw that person step out of the car, she dropped her coffee mug in the driveway. And that's where the real story begins. Karen Peters stood in her driveway, barefoot on the hot concrete, staring at the man who just stepped out of the black BMW parked in front of Marcus's house. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, at least not the kind she'd ever admit to, but from recognition. Because the man approaching Marcus wasn't just anybody. It was Detective Paul Raines. Badge number 742, City Homicide Division. A man she had met before, a man who had arrested her nephew last summer for assault. Karen backed up slowly toward her porch, as if proximity alone could protect her from whatever this meant. Marcus. He just grinned and shook Detective Rain's hand like they were old friends. Because they were. Rains had served with Marcus back in Afghanistan. Different unit, same base. And now, they both had something else in common. They'd both seen what racism looked like from behind a badge. Karen didn't know any of that. But what she did know was this: a decorated detective didn't just casually visit someone like him. She sat on her porch, ears burning, eyes locked on their every move. For the next hour, Marcus and Rains talked, laughed, even grilled a few burgers on the back patio. It wasn't a show, it was genuine. But to Karen, it felt like an attack. Because here was the truth she couldn't process. Marcus belonged here more than she ever did. But Karen wasn't done. By Monday morning, she had already filed another complaint with the HOA, this time accusing Marcus of violating noise ordinances, because apparently, laughing too loud now counted. But when the HOA board met that Friday, Marcus showed up with receipts, recordings, and even a notarized letter from two other neighbors stating he'd been nothing but respectful. Karen was humiliated. The complaint was dismissed on the spot. Still, she couldn't let it go. That weekend, Marcus installed cameras, motion sensors, a Ring doorbell, and a dash cam on his vehicle. Not because he was scared, because he was smart. And sure enough, within 3 days they caught her. Karen, 5:12 a.m., walking across Marcus's lawn with Muffin. She wasn't just walking the dog. She was picking up dirt and sprinkling it on his porch. Petty, but enough. Marcus didn't confront her. Not yet. He waited. Because he knew something she didn't. Karen was unraveling. And then came the turning point. A delivery van pulled up outside Marcus's house, Amazon. The driver, a young black man named Jamal. Harmless, friendly, smiled, waved, dropped off a package. 15 minutes later, sirens. Karen had called the police again. Claimed she saw a suspicious man casing the street, described Jamal's clothing down to the color of his shoes. But this time, she made the mistake of calling 911. Dispatch recorded the call. And Jamal, he wore a body cam. The officer who showed up recognized the van, recognized the driver, and worse, recognized Karen's voice. It wasn't the first false report she'd made in this part of town, but it was the first time someone had hard proof. The officer calmly walked over to Marcus's house, asked for the footage from his front cam. Marcus handed it over. No argument, no emotion, just facts. Karen's voice, her face, her lie. The officer nodded, took a statement, and left. But Karen didn't know what was coming. Because the footage, it didn't just end up in an evidence locker. It ended up on the local news. Suburban woman accused of filing false police report against delivery driver. Her face blurred, but anyone in the neighborhood knew who it was. The story exploded online. The Facebook moms group she once ruled, silent. And then someone, no one knows who, leaked the footage unblurred. The comments came fast. Classic Karen. She's lucky this man didn't get arrested, or worse. This is why we need consequences. And that was the beginning of her fall. But Marcus, he still hadn't said a word. Because he was saving it. All of it. And the real revenge, that was still coming. The fallout came faster than anyone expected. By Monday morning, Karen Peters' world was cracking. Her phone buzzed nonstop, texts, missed calls, and a dozen voicemails. Most were from concerned friends who weren't calling to support her. They just didn't want to be associated with her. The Facebook moms group, where she once controlled every post, she was booted without warning. No explanation. Just removed. Her husband Todd, who mostly kept to himself, barely looked up from his morning paper when she asked if he had seen the news story. Yeah, he said, sipping his coffee. Everyone has. That silence that followed, that was the sound of her losing the last shred of power she thought she had. And across the street, Marcus, he just kept mowing his lawn, not gloating, not saying a word. But everyone knew. And that silence, it was louder than any argument she could have started. But Karen wasn't finished. She told herself it wasn't her fault. that Marcus was manipulating things, that he was the one who made her look bad. In her twisted mind, she still saw herself as the victim. So she took it a step further. She walked across the street one afternoon and knocked on Marcus's door. He opened it, cool as ever. A single raised eyebrow was the only sign of curiosity. "Can I help you?" he asked. Karen took a breath, forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I think we got off on the wrong foot," she said. "This neighborhood used to be very close. And with all the misunderstandings lately, maybe we could talk." Marcus didn't blink, didn't move. "Misunderstandings," he repeated. Karen laughed nervously. "Well, things were taken out of context. You know how the media is." Marcus didn't answer. She shifted awkwardly. "I just think we need to put this behind us. Maybe I was a little protective. But I care about this community." Still nothing. Finally, Marcus tilted his head slightly. "You care about this community," he said, "but you've called the cops on every black man who steps foot on this street." Karen's smile faltered. "That's not true. Jamal. Me. Even my cousin when he visited last month. You called him a stranger walking near your mailbox." Her voice cracked. "Look, I didn't mean." "But you did it," Marcus cut in. Calm, precise. "You meant to. You just didn't think it would cost you." Silence. Karen's lips parted slightly, like she was about to speak, but nothing came out. Then Marcus leaned forward, just enough to lower his voice. "I'm not interested in your apology," he said. "I'm interested in what happens next." Karen blinked. "What do you mean?" He smiled. That same calm, unreadable smile that had driven her insane since the day he moved in. "Let's just say, you made your move. Now it's my turn." Then he closed the door. And for the first time in a long time, Karen Peters felt scared. Later that night, she saw Marcus standing outside with Detective Raines again, talking, pointing toward her house. Raines jotted something down in a notepad. She watched from behind her blinds, heart pounding. Then came the sound she feared most, a knock at her door. When she opened it, she didn't find a police officer. She found a process server. "You've been served," he said, handing her a thick manila envelope. Inside, a lawsuit. Marcus was suing her for harassment, emotional distress, and defamation. And the kicker, she was being investigated for filing a false police report, a felony under state law. Karen's hand shook as she flipped through the pages. This wasn't some bluff. This was real. Names, dates, footage, audio. It was all there. And suddenly, it all hit her. She hadn't just messed with the wrong man. She messed with a man who knew exactly how to dismantle her. And the worst part, he hadn't even gone public yet. Not really. Because Marcus was still holding back the one thing that could destroy her reputation for good. And that secret, that was coming next. Karen couldn't sleep. The letter sat on her kitchen table, Marcus Hayes versus Deborah Peters, in bold print that burned into her brain every time she glanced at it. She had read the first page 20 times. The words felt foreign. Emotional distress, targeted harassment, defamation with malicious intent. But it was the evidence list that really sent her over the edge. Exhibit A, surveillance footage, timestamps included. Exhibit B, audio recordings of police calls. Exhibit C, testimony from multiple neighbors confirming a pattern of racial targeting. He had built a case. Not overnight. Not out of emotion. This had been methodical. And now she was backed into a corner. But Karen, being Karen, didn't fold. No, she got desperate. She called a lawyer. The cheapest one she could find. Some guy who handled parking tickets and the occasional noisy tenant dispute. He took one look at the packet and gave her a single line of advice. Settle. Immediately, but it was already too late for that. Because that Thursday morning, the video dropped. Marcus hadn't posted it himself. Someone else did, a local college student who worked with a civil rights nonprofit. They had picked up the story when Jamal's body cam footage went viral. Somehow they got access to the uncut clips. The title. He bought a house. She called the cops. He got the last word. In the thumbnail, it was Karen, pointing at Marcus, screaming on her porch. The video exploded. 10,000 views in the first hour. 50,000 by nightfall. And then it caught fire. Reddit, TikTok, Twitter. Karen's face was suddenly everywhere. They dug up her HOA posts, screenshotted her Facebook comments, even an old Yelp review where she ranted about certain types of people in a downtown restaurant. Her job, part-time receptionist at a dental clinic, gone by the weekend. She claimed she was being unfairly targeted, that she was misunderstood, but no one was buying it anymore. Because now the world could see what Marcus had seen from day one. A woman who used fear like a leash, and finally, the leash snapped back. But Marcus still hadn't said a word to the media. Not once. He let the world do the talking. Instead, he focused on something else, something bigger,